Question 2, Ruth Davidson. Ms Davidson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister when she will next meet the Prime Minister.
First Minister.
I have no current plans to meet the Prime Minister unless, of course, he finds the backbone to join the TV Leaders debate on the 2nd of April.
Ruth Davidson.
I'm pleased, as we've all heard the announcement in just the last hour, that all of the 4 main party leaders in here have agreed to an STV debate just a month before the election. So, can I ask the First Minister about a recent speech of hers, where she said that she wanted Britain to borrow an extra £180 billion, landing the UK even deeper in the red. Yesterday, my colleague Gavin Brown asked the Deputy First Minister when, under the SNP's plans, Britain would have finally eliminated the deficit. The Deputy First Minister replied, and I quote, "much later." So can I ask the First Minister to be more specific? How much later? In which year, under her plans, would the UK no longer be in deficit?
First Minister.
Well, it's no secret that I take a very, very different approach on austerity to Ruth Davidson and her colleagues. Under the plans that we have published that would see modest increases in public spending, modest increases that would help us to invest in skills and infrastructure and innovation, invest more in our public services, invest to protect the vulnerable that her party's policies are hitting so hard. Under these plans, debt and deficit as a share of our national income would reduce every year over the next Parliament. But I do not pretend otherwise than that I argue for a slower debt and deficit reduction than the Tories do, because I want an alternative to austerity. I don't want the cuts that Tories are proposing to go on harming the most vulnerable and harming our public services. That's the difference between us.
Ruth Davidson.
It was a pretty long answer, but I only asked for a short one. Just 1 year. Just 1 year. That's all I asked for. But it's clear the SNP haven't a clue. So they've no answer about their own plans for Britain. So let me ask the First Minister about her plan for Scotland. Because yesterday she was quoted as saying, "Short of independence, I believe we should have full fiscal autonomy." In response to yesterday's GERS figures and to that statement, the impartial Institute for Fiscal Studies said that this would result in, and I quote again, "substantial spending cuts or tax rises in Scotland." Tax rises equalling 15 pence to income tax for every earner in Scotland. In the past, Presiding Officer, I repeatedly asked the First Minister's predecessor to give a detailed rebuttal to IFS projections, but he never did. So I am asking this First Minister, can she tell us now in this chamber why the IFS is wrong?
First Minister.
Let's look in detail at the IFS report from yesterday that Ruth Davidson talks about. What she has quoted was predicated on Scotland being fiscally autonomous in 2015-16. Now, for Ruth Davidson's information, 2015-16 starts in 2.5 weeks' time. We're not going to have fiscal autonomy then, but perhaps more fundamentally, if Ruth Davidson had had the honesty to complete the IFS sentence about tax rises or spending cuts, she'd find it says this, and I quote, "unless credible policies to boost growth of Scotland's onshore economy and revenues are developed." That's the whole point. We have a choice. We can accept never-ending Westminster cuts from the Tories, the Liberals and Labour, or we can take more control of our own finances and we can build a better future for this country. I know what side I stand on.